and good evening once again. This is Late Night Parents. This is Ted Hicks. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com, where you'll find our latest blogs, wikis, archive of podcasts. We have over 300 episodes available. How about that? Also, you'll be able to find, if you want to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, I guess we'll put up an Instagram widget so that if you want to click like or follow or friend or all the above. We want to thank, before we have our guest of the evening, it's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. We're leading into the holiday. We want to thank all of our affiliates that air the show, but specifically 1240 AM WGBB, also 95.9 SM. We want to say thank you guys for always supporting the show, and for all the people that do write us on Facebook. We don't get back to everyone, and most of the people that know how to contact us on Twitter, I'm a little bit more active there. So with all of that, all the housekeeping is out of the way. Our featured guest for the evening is the author of Gus's Fortunate Misfortune. And the author of the book is none other than Susan Pepka. And Susan is a native of Detroit, currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. She enjoys great diversity throughout her life. She's a mother of 3, grandmother of 4, and Susan has experienced life as a preschool teacher, a technologist in diagnostic imaging, and the co-owner of a successful wellness center, mediation teacher, and now a published author with the debut of her first book, Gus's Fortunate Misfortune. Susan, how are you doing?
I'm really well, Ted. Thank you.
So excited. Thank you for taking the time out this evening to talk with us. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but I got to tell you, I got to thank the good people at Smith Publicity. They were able to share your book, your new book, and I tell you, while I did not get a chance to read it to my son last night, I read it myself, and I was my wife was asleep. She was half asleep. I'm reading the book. She's like, what's going on here? She's also an educator. She's asking me whether or not, oh, hey, I can share it with some teachers at school. I said, yes, you can, but you can't have the book quite yet. But so I guess we'll get into your inspiration for writing your book.
Well, most people don't know this, but the book's based on a true story. So it was inspired, it was inspired by real events. Back in 2013, I was at a Buddhist retreat, and the teacher told a story about an experience he'd had with a little mouse at the temple, and I was so delighted by the story, and I just kept trying to imagine what it would be like from the mouse's point of view. So that's how the story came into being.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, the excitement about the release of your new book. Did you? I guess we'll go into a little bit of inside baseball, and I'll ask you a question like, how hard was the process to get this book published, Susan?
Well, it was just very long and lots of obstacles, it seemed like. I started writing the story in January of 2014, and it was just released last November. So I don't know that it was so hard to do it, as it just required a lot of patience and just allowing the process to take whatever time it was going to take. was writing the story, doing some editing, then turning it over to the illustrator, who is amazing, by the way. I just cannot believe my great good fortune at getting Joseph Cowman to be able to do the drawings, but then allowing him the time he needed to do, and then more editing. And there was actually one point in the writing of it that I realized that the drawings didn't quite go with the story, and I didn't know if we needed to have the illustrations changed or the story changed, but it ended up being easier to adjust the story to it. So Gus had an extra obstacle in there he had to overcome, and in the long run, I think it actually made the story better.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm glad you had already answered my next question. What was the biggest obstacle that you encountered, but you explained that. Hey, I wanted to, the book itself is inspirational and charming. I wanted to know if you could describe the way in which we face challenging circumstances that define us.
Wow. Yeah. So sometimes we encounter challenges, and we can have them. Sometimes we'll respond in a negative way, right? We'll become hard-hearted or bitter or angry or discouraged. That's a big one, is discouragement in the face of obstacles. But when we look at things in a different way, we can look at things as opportunities to learn and to grow and to stretch. And I think those very obstacles are what can help us to attain a higher level if we choose to use them that way.
Susan, we're speaking with Susan Pepka, of the author of Gus's Fortunate Misfortune. Susan, your book touched upon kind of the effects of bullying on a child's confidence. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that we could restore the self-worth by conquering adversity?
It's interesting. Conquering adversity. I don't know that that's a term I would use. I would say transforming adversity.
Okay.
But yeah, when kids are faced with those difficult situations, I think especially with kids, they need adults in their life who have created such a safe space for them, so that even when they encounter those times when kids pick on them, call them names, tease them, whatever form the bullying takes, if the adults in children's lives can create such a safety net for them that they won't go under, that the kids will know that they have a safe space. That's really what Gus is looking for on his adventures in the story. He's really wanting that safe space, which I don't know if I should give away the ending, but but I think it's so important for kids to feel cherished and protected. And so I think that's how we can help kids, how the adults in kids' lives can help them, is by creating that safe space.
Now, I guess it's safe to assume, but, you know, my mom and dad always told me to never assume when I was a young child that Gus's Fortunate Misfortune is about Gus. But I got to tell you, tell me the I guess the inspiration behind Jamyang, the Buddhist monk.
The monk, yeah. Well, so I heard the story from a monk, actually, and so the inspiration for Jamyang is the monk, whose real name is Genjampa. But so he pretty much is, in the story, is how he was or is in real life. Yeah, very kind, very compassionate, a wonderful teacher, and yeah, so what else can I tell you about him?
I don't want you to tell us too much because I want people to go out there and purchase this book. Could you tell us, before we start to wrap up, the importance of community in our lives?
Oh, well, we need one another. I believe wholeheartedly that we depend on one another. I can't do it without you, and I can't do it without any other person who's out here. And so community is just so important. And trying to think how I want to say it. I can't accomplish the things that I need to accomplish without others. And I think it's reciprocated everywhere. What comes to mind thinking of how to answer this question is that when I was at one point in the writing of the story, I was kind of blocked and stuck, and there were so many other things going on in my life at the time. And one morning, as I was getting ready for the day, the thought came to me that I needed to write this story not for me, but I needed to write this story because there's an illustrator out there somewhere who is just waiting for this story so he can create the artwork. And there are librarians out there who are waiting for the story. There are teachers out there waiting for the story. There are parents and there are kids and people waiting for this story. And our lives are just sort of interconnected. And so we need to create harmonious communities. We need to learn to cherish one another. We need to be kind to one another because our society depends on it. And we see so much divisiveness. We see hatred. We see people thinking that they're better than others, that their happiness is more important than the happiness of others. And I'm hoping that we can get to a place where we realize that those ways of thinking are not beneficial, and we need to learn to cherish one another. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it totally answers my question. We're speaking with Susan Pepka, the author of Gus's Fortunate Misfortune. Susan, I'm going to go a little off topic for a second.
Okay.
Of all the things that you have done and your accomplishments and accolades, would you share with us that you're the co-owner of a successful wellness center? Would you share with us what moved you in that direction to to start up a wellness center, and where is it? Kind of,
Well, it's funny because since the writing of that, I've actually semi-retired from that. So I am still very much involved in the wellness community, but I'm not a co-owner anymore. So it gives me more time for other things. But since the time I was a child, I've always been interested in helping people or helping animals, and so I, at one time, aspired to go into medicine, to go into nursing. I didn't actually do that after I married and had children. Then more practical things came to mind. So my degrees are in nuclear medicine and X-ray technology, but I've always been interested in health and wellness, and the opportunity came up back in, I think, 2005 for me to work at a wellness center, and 3 years into that, the owner wanted to retire, so she offered me and another person if we wanted to purchase the business. So that's how I got involved in that. But it's just one of the things I need to do is to help people.
Got you.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I do want to mention that within the book, the tone of the book, when we were, as I was reading last night and I was seeing Gus's adventure, we all face fears from time to time. Mm-hmm. Tell us what our reactions to fear can do.
Our reaction to fear, if we're not careful, it can paralyze us and stop us. But if we with wisdom understand that, so there's some fears that we just need to be really mindful of, like putting your hand on a hot burner or running into a busy street, right? Some of those fears just help us to survive in this world. But other fears are irrational, and we can respond to those fears by understanding that they're irrational. And in the case of kids, it is important to have adults in their lives who can help them to work through that. But looking at your fears, understanding that this fear is an irrational fear and it's paralyzing me, and I don't need to be paralyzed. I just need to find a way to work through this fear so that I can move forward, right? Yeah. I hope that if that answers your question.
Oh, yes, it does. I just want to tell you, your book, it's going to take young readers, because we want to create and generate as many young readers. But I will tell you, I might not be a youngster, but you took me through a journey, which is pretty exciting. And it kind of took me, and I followed Gus on his quest to find his way to turn that very bad day into a hopeful new beginning. So I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out for this evening. Want to know best ways to find your book.
Well, the book is available. Yes, the book's available on Amazon. And right now that's probably the best way to get a copy of the book. I will be doing book signings, but unless someone's coming to Woodstock, Georgia on March 3rd, Amazon is probably the best place. Yeah.
Gotcha. Is it, and also, I think my next to last question was going to be, if our listeners wanted to interact with you via social media, what would be the best way be to
right
try
now,
to get in contact with you?
Yeah, the best place right now is through Gus's Facebook page.
Okay.
Gus's Fortunate Misfortune. And I love it when people send messages, and I will do my very best to respond. I did want to say one thing that you, when you said that you enjoyed the story, the book is a children's book. There's no doubt about that, but it's a book for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. A friend of mine, when she was helping me with the editing, and after she read it, she came to me and she said, Sue, it's really not a kid's book.
Susan,
and go ahead.
I got to jump in here and tell you, I second what your buddy was saying, because I said those are some real world issues that Gus is dealing with.
Yeah. And that's what I want people to realize. I mean, my vision is for parents to benefit as much from sharing Gus with their children as the children do. Because ultimately, if we want to foster kindness and compassion in our children, we need to find a way to create that in our own lives.
Lastly, I do want to mention the cover and the interior illustration by Joseph Kalman was excellent. I was sending a few screenshots to a couple of my friends. I said, hey, I got an interview. I got to do this. I got to do some homework. And one of my buddies said, well, send me a screenshot of what the book looks like. And I sent them the external, the cover, and also the picture of Jan Yang. And they were like, wow, that art is pretty darn good. I'll tell you that much.
It was beyond my imagining. I kind of still have to wake myself up from my good fortune of having Joseph be able to do the illustrations. The book itself just came out so much better than I could have ever even imagined. And my publisher, Nabila Khashoggi, with Full Cycle Publications, she was the one who connected us, and just an amazing blessing.
Definitely. I do want to say thanks again, not only to you, Susan Pepka. I want to say thank you to our friends at Smith Publicity for allowing this, or affording this to happen, to be able to connect the two of us together. It's been a total fortune. I feel I'm the one that's fortunate to receive Gus's Fortunate Misfortune and also to speak with you. I guess the last question I'm going to have is there going to be a series of books? Is there going to be a sequel? Are you thinking about that already? Or are you going to go in another direction? Or you're just okay with this for right now?
No, I am intending to create a series.
Okay.
And, so the story for the next Gus book is percolating. And I just need to get it on paper and get it going. But
gotcha.
Definitely.
well, when you do start thinking about putting the book together, or you need any early adopters, early readers, you definitely give the good folks, the good late night parents, a call or a text message, or I will, right after this call, I will like your Facebook page so that I can definitely follow your journey. Want to thank you once again, Susan Pepka, the author of Gus's Fortunate Misfortune, for taking the time out tonight. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Ted. It's really been delightful.
Take care.
You too.
Could the rules of marriage be ripe for a change? Open relationships are popular among some, and new research suggests why. So we're waiting for Barbara and Michael Foster to join us. Once they join us, we'll be, I think I had them on the line. I'm not sure if they dropped or not. So we'll give them a few minutes. But basically, we're going to talk about Confessions of a Librarian. And I think we have our guests, Barbara and Michael Foster, on right now. So we're going to welcome them on. Hello, is this Barbara and Michael Foster?
Yes, it certainly is.
Hello, and how are you doing?
Well, it's been a mixed day. We just got back from Vermont, where we were all summer, to New York, where we live the rest of the year, and in our lovely little Chelsea apartment, where absolutely everything was broken. The building's front door, our apartment's front door, my internet, my TV, you name it, it was broken. So maybe we should talk about a broken marriage. I don't know.
So Michael,
and we're still talking to each other.
Right.
The nice thing is we're still talking to each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Despite that.
Okay. Well, I want to say it's a pleasure to have both of you on. We're talking with Barbara and Michael Foster.
Right.
And Barbara, I guess you're credited with being the author of Confessions of a Librarian?
That's right. I was a librarian at Hunter College for a number of years, and I was hidden away in the stacks and given kind of boring work. And so I started writing erotic poetry, and I decided to live the life and walk the talk, and so I started to travel around the world and gather information for Confessions of a Librarian, and I confess.
Okay. I want to take a step back and say and talk about the broken apartment, because we have a couple of minutes, and say, was it broken physically, like the door pushed in, or was it just
No, not any kind. No, not any kind of violence. Just stuff that didn't work, but all at once.
Okay.
You know, you have to think about your karma. Something like that.
Oh my goodness. Well, yes, it's like I said, it's a pleasure to have both of you on. I believe I was speaking with Tony and Jenny back in August, maybe July/August, before you guys went away on, vacationing for the summer, wanting to get you guys on to talk with you and just spend a few moments with you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, we don't really take vacations. We go to Vermont to write, which is typical, and New York in the summer is very noisy, to put it mildly. And we get away, and we do a lot of work.
Michael's working on a huge book that's after a book that came out 20 years ago called Three in Love, the history of Ménage à Trois. And he's writing a big book now that is much bigger and many more kinds of relationships and new marriage and new love relationships that have happened in the last 20 years.
Yeah, well, it's not just me. There's three of us collaborating, really. I get the sort of final draft, but
he puts it together and makes it.
When I was back in student of history, working on a PhD, I was always annoyed by history seemed to be what the king so-and-so did, or which army ran over which poor country. And it never interested me. I wanted to know more personal things. And wasn't there a history of love, a history of romance, even a history of adultery? So with Three in Love, we took the famous love triangle, without which, for a long time anyway, you couldn't make a Hollywood movie without one. And we dealt with that, and we dealt with its, not its opposite, but what it sometimes led to, which was a menage a trois, a more friendly three-way relationship. And the book was quite a sensation when it came out in the 90s. Oddly enough, at the same time that the Clinton hijinks were being, in the press, and also, what's her name, Princess Diana was running around. So we couldn't quite meet that competition, I must say.
So Barbara and Michael, so let's get into open relationships. What are they? I guess textbooks-wise, we're looking at non-monogamy. But give us your description, your definition of your open relationship.
Barbara, you want to do that?
I was thinking about this before we called, and I think that there's a long history in America of divisiveness, of warring factions. I mean, in the 19th century, there was the Civil War and the War of Secession, depending on where you lived. And then the divide was a racial divide, and even though that still exists, now there's a sexual divide. And if you look at some of the people who were running for presidency, you'll see that some of them from the Old South are participating in this sexual divide, which is defining marriage, defining love, defining sexuality in terms of their beliefs. And I think America is very divided now, not so much, well, in a number of ways, racially, but also economically and sexually. So as far as who are we in this landscape of American argumentation and debate, we have had a marriage that's very special, and we made our marriage very special by being friends and staying friends and having freedom, and at the same time working together and cooperating, and to the point of even inviting in a third person. So I think we're a very unusual marriage.
Yeah, well, I'll put in a couple 2 cents. That is very interesting. It strikes me as a good subject for another book, The Sexual Divide.
No.
It really does.
These long books that take years and years, they are really incredible when they're finished, but they take a lot of work.
Well, the thing is, Barbara and I got married very young, and I mean very young, 20, 21, and a very traditional marriage and all that. And for several years, well, we were very excited. We were newlyweds and so forth. But after a while, we got curious. What was life like? And we satisfied this curiosity in a number of ways. Not just seeing other people. It was much more than that. And Barbara's book is her side of it. And it talks about all of the adventurous travel she did. And I must say, if you tried that today, if you tried to go to Egypt and cross the Sinai with the Bedouins to see Mount Sinai where Moses got the Ten Commandments, you'd wind up in heaven or hell. You wouldn't get through it. And a great deal of what she did and is reported in the book, you simply can't repeat.
Yeah, India, Argentina, places that were really fabulous and were very formative for me. And now very few women can travel alone.
Very few anybody, really. And I did other forms of travel. I learned Haitian Creole and I went to Haiti to study voodoo. And
really?
Yeah, when Papa Doc was in charge, it was great. When you have a dictator like that, they monopolize crime. You're never in danger because they're the criminals. And I'm serious. And I would walk around at any hour and go to all the voodoo ceremonies. And,
well, he stayed with Papa Doc's dentist.
Yeah.
You can't get much
that
more.
was another thing. Nobody messed with Papa Doc's dentist. So, but I did stuff like that, and she did. And we basically would come back and we'd tell each other things about what had happened. What we never did, and I do want to bring this up, is cheat. That is lie about any of this. And I was so struck by the whole Ashley Madison business, that the hacking revealed, and because the cheating of the people who wanted to cheat got cheated by Ashley Madison, because often there was nobody on the other end, and that's what the hell can you expect, And it's a bad business, lying, and there's a great deal of it, I'm sure.
Well, I just want to jump in here and say, I mean, it's been noted, and I even have you on record, Michael. We're speaking with Barbara and Michael Foster, but he had you on record saying studies that find that 5% of Americans in consensual non-monogamous relationships are lowballing reality. Half of all marriages ended in divorce, and websites such as Ashley Madison that encourage cheating have millions of followers.
Yeah, they did. I don't know about what happened after the hacking. And I don't know who did it, but that was quite. It just revealed the situation was, and there's other sites as well, of course, other cheating sites. But the heck was the sites? I mean, people have been cheating and doing adulterous things ever since the Bible, as the Bible tells us. And it's a bad business. That is a bad business. If you're going to stick to the rules, the old rules, and have a monogamous marriage, well, good for you. But if you have some curiosity, and if your thing in life is to write books, and by the way, Barbara and I continue to write books together. We've done a couple of biographies of really courageous women that have been translated into many languages.
The Secret Lives of Alexandra David Neal.
Yeah,
woman Buddhist who went to Lhasa for the first time in 1924 when it was just Forbidden Journey.
Yeah.
It's another book of ours.
But the one that really is personal is Barbara's Confessions of a Librarian. Now, I don't know if I'll do something similar. I have no idea.
Our
really.
third person has written novels, and they are there is some menage a trois material in the novels. So it's affected all three of us very profoundly to share the New York art scene experience, or the art wars, I call it, where you really grind up your heart and your gut, and you create something, and you put it out there, and you hope it's accepted, and then the internet copies it. So a lot of it is happening that way.
Yeah, another thing I would bring up, the question of whether the rules are changing. Everything is changing. Everything's changing dramatically. Gay marriage is something I wouldn't have dreamed would get this kind of legalization. I knew very well it existed. We live in Chelsea and in Greenwich Village as well, and the gay neighborhoods, but I never thought it would get the legal recognition.
I think it's going to be a big battlefield for the presidential debate, and it's interesting, and it's tremendously worthwhile, of course. But who would have thought that so important a question, so intimate and so personal a question, could enter into a presidential race?
Yeah, that's really something.
I mean, really, this is people's private lives, you know.
True. Hey, guys, we're speaking with Barbara and Michael Foster. I have a question here from one of our listeners. What's the difference between an open relationship and being swingers?
Big
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've never been swingers, so I really can't speak from experience. But from what I know, what I've heard and read and talked to people, swinging seems to be more of a suburban thing, and it's groups of people and who live in perhaps a neighborhood. And I know of we had some contact with the one in in Ohio, and they were outside of Cincinnati in the suburb, and they all sort of knew each other, and they got together and they traded partners that night. And it's a very social thing that we've never had anything to do with, so I can't speak from experience.
Maybe you can think of open marriage as a big umbrella, and underneath that umbrella, it can be open in a number of ways.
Yeah.
It can be open by, for example, the extended family. The person who, I think what it can replace is an American tradition, which is throw out the old husband or throw out the old wife and get a new one. So if you have
like
an open
car,
if you have an open marriage, you can just keep on adding people. And that's one way of doing it. And another way is people who don't marry at all, like three homosexual people who get together and are lifelong friends, or lifelong collaborators, or people who work together and who, over a period of their lives, have an intimate, important relationship with each other, whether they're married or not.
Yeah, and there's open marriage is just a very broad term. It can be on a consensual basis. It can work in a very kind of happy way, or it can be very tight and angry. And I just did a long chapter for the book I'm working on the Kennedys, Jack and Jackie, and God, that he was with another woman constantly, other women, a whole huge list of them, and she tolerated it, but it's not like she accepted it, but she sort of did.
She protected the presidency.
Yeah. But I mean, she was often very angry. So you have that possibility, certainly. Again, a lot of what we did was the need and search for adventure in general, and this is all in Barbara's Confessions of a Librarian. She had this very useful job, of course, but a kind of dull. And she would unfortunately get these long, lengthy sabbaticals, and she would travel to here and there and do reports on libraries. But she would also really travel, and that's something I admire, because I'm not that adventurous personally.
So he's had a long-term relationship for many years with the same person, but I have a different style. I like to date. And I still do internet dating. I have a Facebook page, Confessions of a Librarian, a Memoir of Loves. That's the title of the book and the subtitle. And so you can find me there. Confessions of a Librarian, a Memoir of Loves, Barbara Foster at Facebook.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read this really quick. I'm looking at various studies that appeared. I'm looking at one that appeared in the Journal of Human Sexuality. It states 70%. It talks about the following information on reactions to open relationships from couples involved in this activity. 70% claimed having no problems with jealousy. 25% acknowledge problems controlling jealousy. 59% claim to be happier than their non-swinging counterparts.
Well, that shows how misleading statistics can be.
Yeah.
I think jealousy is an issue that comes up with everybody.
Sure.
Every couple and every threesome and every foursome. And, I mean, there's always this, why do you give this person more time or more energy or more love or more something or other than me? And people get into very ownership kind of feelings with a love relationship. And it's something that you have to deal with no matter what, whether it's an ex-spouse or whether it's a current lover or whatever, or a child or whatever.
I know we're short on time. I have a couple other questions that a few of our listeners. One person asked me to ask you, what happens if you start having feelings for one of the secondaries?
What do you mean, start having feelings? What do you mean?
Yeah, getting attached to, sure.
Well, that happens. That's life. Some people have lifelong attachments.
You don't have to have an open marriage to have that happen.
No.
I mean, that happens all the time, and people quarrel and divorce and marry someone else. I mean, it's very rare that you're going to have love for one person your whole life long, especially if you live a while. And so it is something that you have to deal with in life. It's one of the major questions, I think. And
I think just posing that question is it shows that the person doesn't really understand that this involvement, whatever it is important. It's not like this is a one-night stand or something that you have with another person. This can be a friendship or a love relationship that opens up a new world for you. And then you have to do a balancing act. You have to make sure that the person you're married to is happy and is comfortable with the relationship that you have started with someone else, and that you are honest with yourself and with the other person too. Sometimes this can lead to a divorce, but hopefully it doesn't. It leads to a more larger and richer life.
We're speaking with Barbara and Michael Foster. I'm going to read another quote. The Fosters agree the openness and consideration of others' needs are the keys to their successful marriage. They live, love, and work together as authors and educators. And lastly, it states from Barbara, an open marriage is about more than affairs. And so tell me this much. Is this openness, this open relationship, this open marriage, is gaining popularity amongst, I would say nowadays than 20, 30 years ago, or is it about the same? It wasn't as talked about as much?
Oh, well,
what's your take?
Yeah, we have been studying such things, and more historically, but up through now as well. And certainly everything's changing. And one of the things that's, along with gay marriage, open marriage is definitely more, well, I can't say popular, that's the wrong word, but there's more of it. And I don't think people are quite ready to talk about that. And look, they weren't ready to talk about gay marriage just till a few years ago. I think they'll start to talk about open marriage, and there will be some disagreement about it, just what it is. But it's not like the swingers at all. That was, as I said, that strikes me as a very suburban kind of thing, and whether it still goes on, I don't really know. But dealing with your marriage, and one way people deal with marriage now is they don't marry. They live together, they marry late, right. And so on. But I believe in marriage. I really do. It's worked out fine for me, and it's more than just some kind of commitment to a ceremony. It's having someone you really work for and with. And as far as I'm concerned, marriage is a lot easier than writing a book jointly. That's a tough one, let me tell you. You want to lead to our quarrels, try writing a book with someone.
Can we real briefly talk about the potential risks and rewards and having an open relationship?
Sure.
Yeah, go, Michael.
I think it does take a degree of sophistication, if you want. It takes a degree of good nature and of acceptance. And if you're a very uptight person, if you're a person who does play by strict rules that aren't your rules but have been taught to you in one way or another, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for you. You've got to have some leeway and some really kind feeling in general, and a very specific commitment to the other person, actually. Maybe more of a commitment than a traditional marriage.
Mm-hmm. Well,
good answer. Hey, if we could just wrap it up, because I know we're short on time. Best ways, Barbara, to find your book.
Oh, yeah. Amazon.com is a good way. Just you can search for Confessions of a Librarian, a Memoir of Loves.
It's digital as well as in print.
It's digital, yeah. And that's the best way. And find me on Facebook too if you want.
Okay.
And to join the conversation.
Got you. And Michael, best ways to get in contact with you?
He's at Facebook too. Mickey Stamler. That's a pseudonym of his, a pen name. Mickey Mickey.
Yeah. Well, it's my mother's maiden name, and
and you'll see pictures of all three of us at his page, Mickey Stamler, and actually a couple of pictures of on my page at Facebook too has the three of us. So. You'll be hearing about the three of us later when this book, this long book that we've been working on. He says this is a 10-year book. This book he's working on.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, well, it covers a lot of ground.
He does things in a big way. That's a part of why I like him. He's very serious. He's a very serious, committed artist, and I have tremendous respect for it. And he was the one who really has taught both of us, the other woman and myself, about what it means to be an author, and a serious author, not just every 6 months a new book kind of author, but someone who really delves into a subject seriously and gives the respect to the reader that the reader deserves.
Yeah, if you're interested, our Three in Love is still available.
And there's another website too called 3lovestory.com. 3lovestory.com, and that's about the three of us and our books. I mean, the other woman has a lot of books too. So, and we were the ones that really started her, forced her to write books.
Barbara, Michael, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out tonight.
Thanks,
we want to
Ted.
give you a round of applause.
That's a great idea.
I think I'll have the last word and say, Michael, we want to see a rebuttal to Confessions of a Librarian because you have to tell your side.
Oh boy.
But I definitely want to have you guys back in the near future, probably in early 2016, and just continue this ongoing discussion. So I want to thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Thank
Fine.
you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that was Barbara and Michael Foster discussing their open relationships and Barbara's book, Confession of a Librarian.